Hello guys, welcome to this new CSS Grid tutorial, and today I'm going to continue with the minmax function that we covered in the very last lesson. So in the last video I talked to you about the main content keyword briefly, and I said I was going to elaborate on that in my next video. So that's what I'm doing today, and I'm going to use a 4-column grid and some text and an image as well. So again, our focus is going to be on responsiveness, and for that we're going to be inspecting elements, checking their sizes, as well as stretching and shrinking the window. So to begin, what I have here in the HTML box is a grid container with 4 grid items, and I'm giving them specific classes, item 1, 2, 3, and 4, and each of them has 2 paragraphs: the name of the column, as well as for instance, column 1 has a paragraph of text, column 2 has an image and a paragraph of text, but then column 3 and column 4 are empty aside from their column names. And here in the CSS box I have a container. I've defined a grid. I'm using the grid gap property. If you don't know how it works, I have a video on that in this series on my channel. And then I'm also using some basic styling on every item. I have a padding of 15 pixels, and then I'm making the image width flexible by using a percentage value. In this case, it's 100 pixel, 100%, which means whether I stretch it or shrink it, it always matches the full width available within this column. So basically it's the column width minus 15 pixels of padding on the right and the left side. Alright, so let's jump straight into the minmax function and how it works. And here I have the grid template columns property, and I'm defining 4 columns, sorry. So the 4 columns here, this is the value for the first one. The second one is right here, and then for the third one I'm using the repeat function to create 2 columns with this size here. Alright, if you don't know how the repeat function works, I also have a video on that in this series. So minmax takes 2 parameters as we learned, and the first one is the minimum value, the minimum size, and the second one is the maximum size. So in this case we have enough space, and the size that column 1 takes, for instance, is 200 pixels, because this is for column 1, what I've highlighted here. So let's inspect the element and see if it's really 200 pixels. It should be 170 plus 30 pixels of padding. Indeed, that is what we see here. I have 170 pixels here, and then 50 pixels of padding on each side. That is 170 plus 30, and it's 200 pixels. Now what about the main contents keyword? This content basically instructs the browser to reduce the size of the column to the narrowest elements within that column. In this case, column 1 has only text, so the narrowest elements, or the smallest elements within that column, would be the smallest word, or the word taking less length. But then there is one important condition. When we shrink the column with the main content keyword, we expect the column to shrink without causing any overflow. So overflow happens when the column shrinks to an extent where its content exceeds its width. So the content, for instance, will be pushed outside of the column a bit. So that is overflow. And when we use the main content keyword, we are saying shrink the column to an extent where you can accommodate the content, but then you accommodate it down to the narrowest element size. So in this case, as I shrink this, you can see that the size of the column, the width of the column reduces. The text also moves around, and then to that point we cannot shrink it anymore. So why is that? To give you a clear idea of what is happening, I'm going to comment out the padding here. Now you can see that here, the reason why we cannot shrink this anymore is because the column word at the top here, what I'm highlighting, and then the content word here, I'm also highlighting it now. These are touching the edges of the column. So the column cannot shrink any further. If it does, then we're going to get an overflow, because then some letters of these words, column and content, are going to go outside the column. So this is main content, how it works. Now assuming I was to remove contents, okay, as you can see here, main content is one word, but because of the hyphen, it can be divided with content going to the next line because it has a hyphen. If it was one word, this is how it will be. Main content now touches the edges, all right, because it's one word. We cannot break it down anymore. So in this case, I'm going to add back the hyphen, but let's say I was to take out that word completely, this and column. Now what touches the edges of the first column is sample with the dots. I'm going to take this out, try to shrink it a bit more. Now what touches the edges is the word works with the periods. Now with shows, I'm going to remove that. And now we can shrink it further because what touches the edge is a block. So you get where I'm going with this, right? All right. So now I'm going to undo what I just did here. Okay. I'm going to keep the padding out of the preview to give you an idea. And then now we're going to look at the second column. So what does the second column do? It's exactly the same thing as far as the text is concerned as the first column. So here, as I shrink, the minimum content, mean content, looks at this word here, which is a bit hard to pronounce, maybe consecutor or something. So assuming I was to take this out, now it shrinks a bit more, and the narrowest element that cannot be broken down without causing an overflow is these words. Okay, so I'm taking it out. Now I'm going to remove the lower bus, and we can keep shrinking it. Now it's comedy. All right, now maxim, and so on and so forth. So here's how it works. If, for instance, I was to take out this, the word column for the second element, the second item, sorry, and pay attention to this item 2. So let's say we had only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In this case, this is how narrow the column will be, because we have no padding and all we have is these numbers, which are the narrowest elements within this column. So it will shrink until it cannot shrink anymore. But now look how small our image is. It is not visible. But as we stretch again the column, then we see that the image becomes visible again, and all the text we have gets aligned properly. So I think by now you have an idea of how this works, the main contents. So again, I'm going to undo this. Okay. And I think I'm going to keep the padding off still. So why does the image shrink to that level, and why does it not stay stable? Well, what we have here is a flexible width, right? We have 100%. So it will keep stretching here. That's for the second column, so we have to pay attention to this here. Min max, minimum value, mean content, maximum, auto. But you get the idea. So you can keep stretching it, auto, until the space of the column cannot move again. In this case, in CodePen, we cannot stretch anymore after this with this current view that I'm using. So I'm going to enable the padding again. And because everything is being treated with this border sizing, box sizing and border box, the padding and the width that we determine are being computed all together for the total width. So I'm going to enable that again, and there we have it. So auto controls how how the column can stretch, and min contents also controls how the column can be shrink. In this case, now that we have the padding, you see that our columns look a bit bigger even when we cannot shrink them any further, because the padding is being considered as part of the width of the columns. So here I think the repeat function, I already mentioned that we covered that in a previous tutorial. So basically this video is to show you how to use the min max with the min content, as opposed to having some fixed values. Let's say you had 100 pixels here and 100 pixels here. Okay, so this is what you will have. Okay, let me add 100 pixels here instead of auto, or 200. So this is what you will have. Okay, it's always the same size, not very responsive, because here now we have a lot of space, blank space around. You probably want to make use of that. So that is why keywords like auto and min contents are very important to understand. And then we also have max content, which is the opposite of min content. And what max content does basically is it looks at the largest elements within a column, and it uses that to determine the width of the column. So I hope you learned something in this video, and I'll come your way again this week with another tutorial. So I hope you subscribe and you like this video, and you also share it with your friends and family. Until then, I'll catch you next time, and be blessed. Bye.